Eric.
What?
We're here.
Did you see him texting?
We're starting the podcast.
Oh, my bad.
Yes, please make sure you're present
Now
when
we're
doing
starting
this.
it, right?
Yes, now we are starting it. Yeah, Eric, I think we need to have a chat about taking accountability.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what we're going to be talking about today on this episode of the Principal Choice Podcast.
Find your purpose, find your people, and find your place. Welcome back to the Principal Choice Podcast. On today's episode, we talk about accountability, how to take it, some of the hardships that come with it, and the benefits of when you finally start to take accountability and hold others accountable at the same time. We are joined by Ashley Stoeber. Welcome to the show. So I know one thing for me with taking accountability, it was a little bit of a journey to get there. I guess some people maybe start out as kids and they're just, boom, I'm taking accountability out of the womb. Not my case, you know. I think that happens to all of us, but it kind of happened for me around that high school period. For you, when did you really start to value taking accountability?
Sure. For me, I felt that with accountability, it really didn't click until I probably turned around in my 30s, you know. Before, I used to work at several other jobs, and I was like this young hotshot kid, you know, in my 20s. That's what I consider it anyways, where it's like you feel like you know everything. No one can be wrong. You're always right. And that no one else's opinion really matters. You know, like you don't really listen yet. And so then after I left my previous position and I was able to like kind of take the pressure off of myself, it gave me the ability to start listening to people and taking into their words and everything that they are trying to tell me and trying to help me grow. And so it really helped me jump off probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I really learned what the word meant, number one, you know, what does it mean to be accountable? Because people like to make accountability sound like such a bad word, you know? Accountability means you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. Accountability means you're wrong. But to me, accountability means something so much different where it's like, you're growing as a person because you're taking that accountability. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It doesn't always have to be something that's perceived so naughty, you know? Like, whenever you take accountability, to me, it's showing that you have the respect for the people you work with, the respect for the people you're talking to, and that you want them to trust you. Because if you walk into a conversation and you don't take that accountability and you're just essentially trying to push off the blame onto other people, onto other situations, whatever it might be, then people seem not to trust you anymore. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to, you know, take any more information into you because you've now created this barrier. Yeah. And for me, once taking down my barrier, taking my accountability, I felt a lot more positive change with people I talk to all the time, either at work or at home. You know, people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm not so mad anymore because Ashley took that accountability for her own behavior or for that situation or for whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, there was a few things in there. I definitely like, it starts with respect. I like how you put that there.
Yes, yes.
And that's not just respect for others, it's also respect for yourself.
Yeah.
Like you were saying where you were like that hot shot, you know, like, oh, I'm doing everything right, I can't do anything wrong. At the end of the day, you weren't really respecting yourself because you thought you could do no wrong. It didn't matter if you know, blew somebody off even when you shouldn't have, or said something to someone and you didn't take accountability for it. It was not only maybe a disrespect to them, but also a disrespect to yourself, so.
Yeah, I feel like with I really liked what you said with that respect, because honestly, that's what I keep going back to in the baseline of this, because it's really just respecting that your actions created this event, this issue, this happenstance. It could be something positive, could be something negative, but it was your actions that did that. And it's really interesting to think that, you know, you would have to respect yourself and others to say, hey, I see that my actions can actually cause waves. How can I take that and ease the tide, if you will. Like instead of a tsunami, how do we make this like a nice steady pond again? Let's get this going. And that first step really is accountability. What do you feel like is the hardest part of being self-aware to take that accountability?
Sure. I think that it definitely comes back to listening, because if you don't acknowledge that you need to take accountability, then you're not going to provide it, right? And so being able to be aware and listen to what people are telling you so that you can initiate that accountability without somebody having to tell you, hey, Ashley, you're wrong. Because then you get defensive, you get upset about it and everything. And so I think it's just kind of like taking that extra 30 seconds to really think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And sometimes you just have to disengage for a moment and be like, hey, let me get back to you on that. I don't really know how I want to respond to that. Let me get back to you, okay? And then like after you've had a little bit of time to think, then it's like, okay, let's talk about this now, and everything. And that's a very grown-up thing to do, a very professional thing to do, and like for me, my spouse, she's like notorious for it, like she thinks really hard about what she's going to say before she says it, especially in like a heated situation, because one of her things is, I don't want to say something I'm going to regret. I'm not going to say something that I can't take back from you. So sometimes you have to just get up, walk away, come back, talk about the situation. And that's just a very okay thing to do. And I think that, as being the person from the other side, you have to allow it. Let that other person think about it, because you don't want to have an unnecessary conflict that could have just been thought out a little bit longer to have a more productive conversation. And I think it's all about that productive part of the conversation, Kind
of like an accountability circles.
Exactly.
I'm like putting in my head, I'm like, oh, like, your spouse was accountable enough for herself to say, I'm stepping away for a moment to be more accountable for you together.
Yes.
Or even in a work setting, your manager maybe gives you feedback and it's like, wow, that was a lot right now. My manager just held me accountable. Now I have to take the steps to hold myself accountable and soak it in and continue forward with it. When looking at the topic of accountability and the action of it, at least for me, I feel it's the first step of taking accountability for myself is the easiest. Not that it is easy, but it is easier than holding somebody else accountable.
Yes.
What are some things that you've done to help hold other people that you work with accountable? Maybe if you're doing like a training with them or something like that. What are steps that you take and things that you keep in your mind in order to make sure you're holding accountability for them?
Sure. So one of the reasons why my manager thought, I'd be a good person for this topic was because I preach accountability all the time in my team chats, in my messages, in my emails, all of the time. And it's, I like to think of us as a whole, and so I'm like, hey, we have to keep ourselves accountable as a team to do these things. And, sometimes, like I said before, it's kind of like you have to step back, think about where you're going to stay, collect that information, and then provide it to other people. Because there's been times where I've gotten messages from my manager, and it's something that I might not necessarily like to see. And I've had to step back. Sometimes I take the whole day to think about what I'm going to say first. And then I'll provide it back and be like, well, hold on. Let's talk about accountability here. You said this, this, and this. This is how it happened, and then you kind of go from there. And then it gives my manager enough time to reflect about, and hold himself accountable. And then he gets back to me and says, you know what, you're absolutely right. I did say that, I'm sorry that, it came out this way. And then you're able to move forward, very productive conversation, right? It doesn't always have to be pointing the finger at somebody and going, you're wrong, this is why, and having a very negative attitude about it. But if, you kind of come at it from a very, well, you said, this is what we were going to do. This is the information. You were CC'd on this email. And you kind of are able to move forward with that because it's less of a defensive mechanism and it's more of a, okay, you're right. You get a more professional, kind of interaction that way. And same thing with like in my team chats, in training, things like that. I say, we as a whole, as an organization, are responsible for this contract. and we have to be accountable for our actions. You know, if you're doing these things, that's going to put us in risk of this. If, you know, you're saying this, then it's going to be negatively perceived. And you kind of just move forward with that. And I think, you know, just kind of giving people examples to help them hold that accountability, because a lot of people won't understand. They don't have that ability, or they haven't reflected on that particular topic in that way to go, oh, you know what, you're right. Like that could, you know, be negative or something like that. But giving people examples, I think, is just one of the best things. You know, if you have evidence, if you have examples, if you have previous emails, clips, things like that, that can kind of help initiate that conversation and not make it so negative. You know, like you're going into that conversation with a purpose. You know,
facts of the situation.
Exactly. This is what you're trying to get a
at.
hold of. This is what you're trying to accomplish. You're not trying to accomplish a negative vibe, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's productively as a group or as a partnership or as a collective working towards a common goal, a mission. And that takes accountability. And I like how you did provide, you know, sometimes you have to have examples, especially for someone that's new at something and they don't know what they're looking at. How do they know what they're supposed to take accountability for if they have no idea what's going on? And really, I found like a big way to push that forward is always pushing honesty, because it builds trust. You talked about that a little bit as well. But if you're honest as a team leader or as a leader or manager, whatever your title is, and you really push that with your team or the people you work with, it will all slowly fall into line. Just kind of how the steps go. And then that builds off of each other. The accountability is a two-way street, three-way street, however many people you have. It's a multiple-way street that everyone has to take stops at. So.
Yep,
Absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off of that too, it's great having that example. And I think it's really great that, you know, you are able to have those open conversations with your manager, because I always tell my team to let me know, because I want to be held accountable at the same standard. I think it's hard because a lot of people have a hard time wanting to go and bring up something that could potentially be negative with their manager or with someone who is in a higher position than where they are at. What do you feel like is the best way to kind of navigate those sort of situations for someone who might be struggling to kind of say, hey, I just have to have this one step. It's not that I don't get the support I need more, and I want to hold them accountable because they said they would do this and I'm not getting this. Like, how do you have those kinds of conversations where you kind of help guide them?
Sure. So one of my biggest suggestions is don't be afraid. We're all human. You know? And so don't be afraid of your manager. They're there to support you. You know, don't be afraid of the higher ups, your leads, whoever. Don't even be afraid of your coworker, because we are all human and we all need help. And so, you know, one of my biggest things is like the trickle down theory of management. You know, if you don't have a decent manager or a leader in general, and you don't have good communication with them, then you just get really frustrated and angry. And then you get to like a despair place where it's, why would I even bother? Why should I even say anything? They're not going to do anything anyways. And then, you know, you get to this boiling point where then it's, well, why didn't you talk to me about it? You know, and like, you don't want people to be in that mindset of, well, why should I say anything? They're not going to do anything about it anyways. Because it doesn't make a very healthy relationship. It doesn't make a very healthy work relationship in general. And one of the things I remember from like onboarding was, you know, somebody had said, don't just talk to your coworker. Don't talk sideways. Talk upwards. You know, if you don't provide people with information, they don't know about it. And if you're just expressing your frustration with people who are maybe on the same level as you, then those issues are never being risen to anyone's attention. And then again, you're at the boiling point and you're frustrated, you're angry, your work is suffering, you know, and everything. And so like my first step is just don't be afraid. Put that branch out there, put that email out there. Sometimes it sounds weird. Sometimes you need more help. But, you know, generally in my experience, anytime I've ever come to my manager, any one of my managers, I've always, you know, been very open with them. They've respected that. and they've said, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. What do you want me to help you with? What can I help you accomplish? And it makes you feel so much better because you weren't met with, well, you did this wrong and now I have to write you up. It's, okay, well, thank you for taking the accountability that you feel like this was wrong. So what can I do to make it right? Just take that first step. Just get out there.
Absolutely. Bridge that gap a little bit.
Exactly.
I can say as a manager, I do my best to be like, I seriously am here to support you any way I possibly can. Please let me know. I just know some people have that hang up still, but I think you got it right down to the baseline of that too. It comes back to that respect because we had this open and honest conversation. We respect each other now. We know we can hold each other accountable and we're building that trust. And I think that is just such a great key piece of just not being afraid. Because I am a nervous Nelly. I will say that. I get a little, oh no, please don't, very easily. But it's hard to overcome. It really is. And I think, just continually putting yourself out there, it has helped me. I do myself a little pep talk and, anything that works. But I really like that kind of building that respect and not being afraid.
100%. And some things you'll find too, I know for a lot of people and myself, sometimes it's the fear of the what if they're angry at me because I brought this up, or what if they just don't care. And I think even with that, if you train yourself to understand that if you bring something up that in a positive light, in a productive way, and you get immediately shut down and are just told, be quiet, don't talk about it, maybe that's not the right place for you. Maybe it doesn't fit with you, and now you have your answer. Was it the answer you wanted? No, but at least you have an answer, and you're not prolonging the inevitable as much. You can start to say, okay, like maybe I should go somewhere else. Maybe I should ask somebody else. Maybe I should say something to someone else, and go from there and take those steps to actually get a good answer, not just like what you were saying, Ashley, talking back and forth between each other and that negative, I guess, like groupthink that people can have sometimes if they don't want to take accountability and just keep down that spiral. Yeah. As far as we talked a little bit about how others hold accountability, when you're looking at it from a equal playing field, so maybe not you to your manager, but you to another person at the same level as you, what do you find as sometimes the biggest challenge for accountability or teaching the person to take accountability?
Sure. So I think just avoiding that negative response is the hardest part, especially when you are on a level field with another person, and everything, because you don't have seniority. I mean, you might have been here longer than they are, but to them, they don't really necessarily respect you because you're not a lead, you're not a supervisor, you're not their manager, and stuff like that. And, there are times whenever I've had conversations where I'll just be like, hey, I understand everyone's upset about this, but, it's not being very productive. And this is part of our contract. There's no use getting upset about this. How about we just put all of that, energy into, doing something else, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily come off the best to other people, and everything. But to me, it's either you can participate in the conversation and add to the negativity or add to the problem, or you can try and defer it. Sometimes people just need something to distract them from, something else to focus on, and, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and when it comes down to accountability, I'll definitely give an example and be like, hey, this isn't what we should be doing. We should be doing this, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard than this, and again, sometimes it doesn't go over well, but sometimes, you have to take it to the next level. Talk to your manager, talk to your lead, whatever it is. A lot of times I'll put something out there for a suggestion to somebody. And if I see that it's a revolving issue or something that maybe they're just not contributing as a whole, I'll bring it to my lead's attention. Hey, do you have any suggestions on what might be more receptive to talk to somebody about, in this way? Or maybe can I get a little bit of your support behind what I'm saying? And, then you go one step further, you talk to your manager, hey, so this is kind of how I felt, what's your opinion on it? Is it something that maybe I shouldn't be as invested in? Or, is this something that maybe we could talk to, the team as a whole, or, something like that? And same thing with like personal relationships as well. Sometimes you got to get that outside opinion, go talk to somebody else and be like, hey, so this is a situation I'm having, do you have any suggestions on how to handle it? Because, going back to me being this hotshot 20-year-old, who never listens to anyone else, I experienced a lot of examples of what does not work, what does not work, and like how if you don't communicate with your leadership, if you don't communicate with your team members, what is the result of that, right? It's all about communication. It's all about good, constructive communication, not continuously being negative, not continuously being unproductive. Every single interaction should be productive, and it should be working towards being positive. It can't always, be positive, obviously. Some people got to have negative or constructive criticism in order to move forward and everything. But, it's not something that's easy. It's not something that's easy. But if you never try, if you never put your words out there, then you'll never know. And like really honestly, the words that you have to say, if you feel that you need to voice them, they're important enough to you to be listened to, regardless of by who. And so, never be afraid to take that first step, to voice your opinion, especially if you feel like it's going to benefit your team, your people, your relationship as a whole. And sometimes you got to pass it up the chain, to 100%. Get that right trickle down,
Yeah. Just got to not be afraid to take that accountability, take that first step. So.
And I really love what you were saying too about, yes, there are times where people kind of get a little into the negativity and it just becomes a cycle of negativity there, and trying to fix that. And then I also like what you said about communication and how that is very important. And, the more I think about accountability and what we've all discussed here, I keep thinking that accountability is truly just a way to show someone how much they mean to you.
Exactly.
Because you care enough about them to have the hard conversation to say, hey, you did this and it was not correct. And I'm here to help guide you through that. What can I do? And the best thing you can do is, as much as it stinks to hear, you did something wrong, or you were not right, or this was not okay in any way, is to sit with that and just allow yourself to feel, whatever you're feeling. For me personally, I'm shame, just shame, all the shame, feeling that, but then also going, they brought this to me because they care enough about me, my goals, and who I am to them that they want me to succeed. And it's to get that mindset and separate it from like, this is someone attacking me to someone who is trying to guide me. And unfortunately, having the uncomfortable conversation gets you there. And that accountability is part of that and like kind of conversation.
100%.
But I really wanted to make sure
that was a great way to put it.
Oh, thanks.
Very eloquent way to end it off.
Oh my God.
That accountability shows you the other person cares.
Yeah.
100%.
Exactly.
And then I'm over here like, oh my God, thanks. Let me ruin the moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ashley, for jumping on with us. We appreciate you and talking about accountability and all the positives with it and how to jump around it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, Eric, what did we learn?
We learned a lot, actually. There's lots of benefits to taking accountability, that which I will now be using. Got my phone away now. Don't got to worry about that.
I do care.
With it really just coming from respect and all the good that it can bring to you and the people you work with and even in your personal life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Continuing that communication and respecting others is the baseline of holding others accountable and taking accountability as well. And for more information, please check out our show notes below.
Until next time.
Oh, yes. Join us.
Find your purpose.
Oh, yeah. Find your purpose.
Find your people.
Your people.
Find your place.
Your place at the
Yes.
Principal Choice Podcast.